Hello, everyone. Welcome to PAWAN LUTHRA podcasts. Joining me today, Jodi McKay, possibly the most admired non-Indian in the Indian diaspora in Australia. Jodi's high regard for all things Indian is well known, and she works not only tirelessly but passionately to advocate for better relationship between India and Australia. A person I admire greatly for being an advocate in not only the bilateral space, but multiculturalism and women's issues. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you, Pawan. That's such a lovely intro. Thank you.
It was in October 21 you left politics and soon afterwards became the chair of AIBC and the director of the Australia-India CEO Forum. For a girl who grew up in Gloucester, regional New South Wales, why this tilt towards India?
Well, perhaps we should say where Gloucester is first. So most people...
don't people know where Gloucester
people
is?
have no idea where Gloucester
Just
is.
go north somewhere and before you get to the bigger town, stop at a smaller town.
Well, if you know Taree, it's kind of inland from there. It's a town of 2,500 people and it is not a multicultural place at all. So your question is actually a good one. But I think my love of India and my deep devotion to the India-Australia relationship really occurred when I was a Member of Parliament. And obviously representing a significant Indian-Australian community and falling in love with the Indian culture and understanding the enormous potential of the Australia-India economic relationship.
Which year was this?
So, oh gosh, I was an MP back in 2014.
Right.
Yeah. So
and that was around the time when Prime Minister Modi came to Australia.
The first time.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so since then, my involvement has changed. It's become more economic rather than more cultural, which is what it was in the political sense. But I see for me that there's been a maturation of how I see the relationship and where I think I can contribute. So yes, this girl from Gloucester is now a firm India advocate and working in the Australia-India space, which, as I said, I love, and as you said, I'm passionate about.
So that brings us to the next question, that you are director of the Australia-India CEO Forum, which brings together the senior business leaders of both India and Australia to strengthen the relationship, a vision shared by the Prime Minister of both the countries. Tell us about your work at the CEO Forum.
Well, the Australia-India CEO Forum has been going since 2012, and it was established firstly by Rajiv Gandhi and Bob Hawke. But over the years, it's a CEO Forum that has had ebbs and flows, and I think that has largely mirrored the strength of the relationship. Last year in Mumbai, when our Prime Minister was there, the CEO Forum was relaunched or revitalised, and there was a commitment by both Prime Ministers and both Trade Ministers that there needed to be this high-level business engagement, so we're talking CEO level, to actually drive investment and also to make recommendations to government on changes that need to occur. For me, you know, I've been leading the intersessional work on 5 working groups, as well as building a whole program of activity for corporates in Australia. But for me, this is not just about that connection between CEOs and executives. It's actually about establishing corporate confidence in the relationship. So it's about saying that, you know, we have the highest level of support from our business sector, and therefore that naturally flows to SMEs and to startups and others interested in the relationship. So it's a great job. I get to travel to India a lot, which, as you can imagine, I'm quite enthused about.
Right.
But I also get to shape policy, and that's been really exciting with the working groups.
But let's dig into that a little bit closely. Last year when Prime Minister Albanese went, there were about 50 CEOs of Australian companies who went there, which included CEOs like Alan Joyce, the then CEO of Qantas, Macquarie Bank's CEO Shamara, and a few others. Now, how many of them have gone back and revisited, or how many of their counterpart CEOs have come to Australia in the last 12 months?
Well, I think, you know, you mentioned Shamara, for instance. She is the CEO of Macquarie, but she's also the Australian chair of the CEO Forum, which has been terrific, having someone like Shamara, who's not just a well-recognised, incredibly admired corporate leader, but knows India because Macquarie has been there for over 20 years. So if you take Shamara, I was with Shamara in May when she was in India, and we met with Anish Shah, the Indian India chair. We had a meeting where we discussed the recommendations of these working groups that we've set up. But I think what's thrilling for me is if you look at when ANZ Shane Elliott first took his board to India, people sat back and went, wow, that's a change. But you are seeing more and more of that. In fact, Sanjeev Gandhi was telling me today that he's taking his board to India. I know that there's been a high-level representation recently by Commonwealth Bank. So we are seeing more and more attention on India. Vicky Brady was there recently from Telstra. So it's exciting. And I think that where corporates were perhaps in the shadows in their engagement economically with India, it's now we need to talk about it and we need to be able to tell that wonderful story.
What about the Indian origin CEOs? How many of them are visiting Australia?
Well, we have seen, I think 3 or 4 that I have met with. Anish was here last week, which was terrific, catching up with him. But I think that it really comes down to where the interest is in the investment that's occurring. So here from India into Australia, it's far more mature. So, we've got HCL here, TCS, Infosys, Reliance. We've got some of our big Indian companies that have been here for quite a while. I mean, I mentioned Macquarie, that's been there for 20 years, Deakin 30, ANZ over 20 years. But I think what we've seen is certainly a presence in India of more companies, but certainly in recent times. Whereas India, we're seeing them more often and at a longer period here in Australia. So I would like to see more Indian CEOs here. I'd like to see a greater connection, and that's what the CEO Forum is about driving that. It's about saying that as CEOs you have a responsibility in this relationship. But as I said, the important work is also about the policy work. So we've had 5 intersessional working groups. Digital has been headed by Telstra and TCS. We've got education, renewable energy, critical minerals. We have infrastructure, finance, investment headed by Bank of Baroda and Macquarie. And these are 54 recommendations that we've come up with that are going to both governments, which are about how you elevate the relationship and remove any barriers.
Is that the first time the depth of these?
Yeah, it's interesting because the BCA has, so I work for the Business Council of Australia that has the Secretariat. I direct the Secretariat. We have an MOU with the Confederation of Indian Industry, who everybody knows, obviously, that has an interest in India. But in the work that we've done as co-partners, it is the most significant body of work that CII has done with any country. And so we're talking about more than 20 CEO forums and council committees that they have. And they've never before done this sort of intensity of work and volume of work. And there's 54 recommendations, as I said, across 20 policy areas and 5 sectors. And it's been a massive exercise.
But tell me, so we've had ECTA signed off in September, or agreed to in September 21, 3 years down the track. We're still having trouble getting CICA across the line.
Yeah.
You can see, and you've just narrated to me, the enormous potential for both these countries to work together. Does this ongoing delay frustrate you, or is this slowdown normal in these circumstances?
That's a really good question because, we all expected that CICA would be signed last year. We were at that stage saying we want to see it by the end of the year. I mean, here we are ending the year in 2024 and we still don't have it. There's another round of negotiations that's occurring early November. I met with the Indian and Australian lead negotiators when the last round was here in August. And, I think the issue that is, that is always going to be a problem between the two countries is one that is actively being discussed, and that's agricultural market access. But I think there is common ground when you talk about agriculture on agri-tech. So what is the technology that you can bring to bear in climate change, in food and water security, increasing efficiency? So I think that there's space there that both countries see a kind of common interest. But I would love to see Sika get across the line. And I think that there is certainly a will by both countries to do that. We were the first Western country to sign a free trade agreement with India. It's been successful. I hope that when Sika does get across the line, and I am saying when, that we are more prepared to promote it, to be out there, making sure people are aware of it. What happened with ECTA, I think that the India side was well prepared, the Australia side was not. We were going into a federal election when it was signed. I think we need to do better at making sure we take a run at it as soon as it's finalised. And we stand ready to do that. The Business Council of Australia has been very firm on its views about needing to see greater awareness and education.
Do you see the federal elections in Australia next year again holding it back? Because you said previously.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I think the next round of negotiations is November. So if we don't see that, then we're not going to see negotiations another round until early New Year. And yeah, I think that's a real possibility that it could then hold it up. I mean, we don't know when our election is, March, April, May.
I would say all pundits are giving it to May.
Yeah, possibly. I'm certainly not privy to it, despite what people may think. I'm not privy to it. But I hope we get it across the line. It would just be a wonderful, the architecture requires this. We've been talking about it for a long time, so I hope it gets across the line.
Jodi, now I just want to dive a bit deeper in here. We always talk about 3 levels of engagement between India and Australia: government to government, business to business, and people to people. Government to government, lots of ministerial visits going on at the moment. Business to business also seems to be improving, a lot of passion over there. But SME opportunities at people to people level just do not seem to be happening, in spite of the Australian government even setting up a $42 million taxpayers' dollars funded Centre for Australia-India Relation Care. The question that many are asking is there a genuine interest out there? Are we getting through? Are we telling our story appropriately?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And as you said, I think the government has done, apart from Sika, the government has done a great job. And we have those relationships at the highest level, and we have an architecture that works. Business is doing its thing, and the CEO forum that I lead is a part of that. People-to-people relationships is the living bridge. I mean, Peter Varghese first identified this back in 2018, where he spoke about the diaspora being able to get into the nooks and crannies that other people can't. And the Centre for Australia-India Relations, it has one of its pillars, which is around those people-to-people relationships. I think CARE's doing a good job, but I think that this is one area that does require specific attention. One element of CARE's work in this is their CEO director network. So this is tapping into CEOs and directors of an Indian heritage and making that
at what level?
connection.
You were talking
at
about
the executive board director level.
Right.
And I think that's terrific, because I think that is really important in being able to.
But we're looking at SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. How do we tap into them?
Yeah, and that is occurring organically and not at an organised level. I know the power of the diaspora in this relationship, but I think it is important that we to be honest, we need to start at that kind of India literacy place. So people need to understand that you need to, if you're going to go into Kerala, then you need someone that understands Kerala. If you're going to go into Telangana, they've got to know Hyderabad. There is still basic information that people don't have. And when they do get that information and they realise that they need local knowledge, that's when those people-to-people connections kick in. But yes, I mean, this is a responsibility of CARE. I know that Tim Thomas and Swati Dave, who are the chair and CEO, have this as one of their, their key deliverables, and I hope that we can see something more coming out of it. But it is so important. It's incredibly
but a difficult space
important.
To tackle.
It's.
How would you tackle it?
I would do it state by state and sector by sector. So I would not just as I said, not just look at India, I would look at, right, what have we got in Kerala? And I'd focus there. You know, what have we got in Maharashtra? How do we tap into, how do we tap into those people who know the states, who know Karnataka, who, understand the amazing, startups and innovation that's occurring in Bengaluru. I think, if you can separate it by sector and by state, I think that makes it much easier if you've got those bite-sized pieces. And we know the community leaders, we know who's out there doing really well, but you've got to be able to get those relationships working. And people have to know that they go to the diaspora because the diaspora actually knows how to get in there. If you talk to any business, any large business that is going into India, they will tell you that how they got there and why they're successful is that they actually have members of the diaspora that are leading those efforts.
So bring the same template from the higher
I think so.
high level business to more SMEs.
Yeah, but again, as you identified, that is a little harder. But I don't think it's impossible. But I do think you could do it state by state, sector by sector. It would make it much easier.
Jodi, now, while there's been a good relationship between India and Australia for a very long time, but it got accelerated during the COVID time periods when China went into a deep freeze, the supply chain issues started coming up. India and Australia, even for geopolitical reasons, became closer together. Now with China coming out of deep freeze and a warming of relationships between Australia and China, does that put India slightly in the back seat in the set of priorities?
I'm one of those people where, with that question, I kind of bristle because I think
bristle away.
You don't want to see me do my total
I've seen you bristle away, so I know that.
Yes, you have. We won't go into that.
We are going to go into that.
So I think it shouldn't be just whether it's China or India. It should be both.
Right.
It should be both. But I have.
But is it?
No, it's
Thank
not.
you.
It's not. And I see that when I just see China, even from a government level, even from a corporate level, getting preferential treatment because it's mature. It's mature. And India we're starting off where the relationship has been there, but India has kind of, as you said, opened itself up now. It said, look, we're open to the world and we're really keen to engage. But there is still such a lot of work we need to do with India. And in the meantime, while we're doing that kind of building work, the relationship with China is mature and people understand it. The sectors are well established. The means of being able to succeed. And I think Nicholas Moore's report on Southeast Asia was a really important report in being able to look at, Australia's kind of strategic advantages in the region more generally. But I don't want us to forget about Peter Varghese report either. And, the federal government is updating that. So they're providing, I think, the second or third, this is called an update. It's a roadmap that they're putting out, which I'm really keen to see when that will eventually be released. But we need to do more to make it about India and not to bring that into the conversation. I want to talk about India.
All right, we won't ask you the tough questions, so let's go to the easy ones. Your 2-year term as the national chair of AIBC comes to an end very shortly.
It does.
Now, what would you count as your highlights and what more could have been done?
Well, I'm keen for you to talk to give me a bit of an assessment on this.
I'm doing the interview. Why would I ask a question if I knew? Why would I ask a question if I knew the answer?
But I'm a former journalist.
I know.
But let me say why. I should tell you why. Because before I took on the national chair role, I'm talking directly to the viewers now. I called you and I said, Pawan, they've asked me to do this. What do you think? And I won't say what you said, but I took it on, and I think we've been able to a few things. We've been able to build confidence in a bilateral chamber. Our membership has increased. Financially, we're doing well. I leave in the next couple of weeks with the first general manager in place.
I love it. Without discussing a conversation, you've disclosed everything.
We've rebranded. Well, I want you to tell me how I've done. We've rebranded. We've built our relationship with our stakeholders. We've got all our chapters that are pumping away. And, there are always going to be trickiness, I think, in a bilateral chamber like AIBC, but it has a rich history and it is worthy of support. It plays a really important role, particularly around that SME side of things. I mean, there are corporates that come in that are members and support AIBC, and that's terrific. That's absolutely necessary. But I think the support that AIBC gives in the small to medium and also startup sector is very important. And also, being able to provide a vehicle for conversations on India, that's important too. But, one of the challenges still is with AIBC, how we move beyond having it being about the diaspora. I was the first national chair that was of a non-Indian background, and it was, that was a strategic decision that was made by our previous chair, and I think that has been terrific. We've built an incredible leadership team. Rajni who heads Deakin in India is the vice chair. Tim Regan, who is the chief operating officer for the Globe. Ashok Mysore, Emphasis. Irfan Malik. We've got a great leadership team. So I leave after 2 years knowing that it's, I'm too busy, but knowing that we've done a lot in 2 years.
Jodi, talking about bristling, you would not mind me sharing about a recent dinner which we had with our respective partners, where your partner Stephen and I were offered another round of drinks, but Rajni and you were blatantly ignored. You were immediately angry and very vocally expressed your displeasure at this gender bias, and rightfully so. In a recent article in Fortune India, it is revealed there are only 100 women CEOs in the 2,000 listed companies on the National Stock Exchange in India. That is less than 5%. Does this lack of gender diversity at the corporate levels in India bother you?
Oh my gosh, so you're opening, apart from that dinner we had, and yes, I found it to be odd that as men you were offered another, it wasn't even that I wanted the drink, really. It was just that I wasn't offered it. And it was just, oh, you two, because you're male, Rajni and I weren't offered it. That was, so I did bristle. But, one of the things that I have done in the role I have with the Business Council of Australia is we have established the Australia-India Women's Leadership Forum. And it was launched in May. We're doing it in conjunction with CII. And the reason for that is that there are a dearth of women members on the CEO Forum and in the joint working groups. Australia naturally does better than India. But for me, it is the fact that often it is not even asked about, when you point out there are no women in the room, it's like, oh, there are no women in the room. And even, I get so frustrated when we've got a delegation that's there and the men all come to the front and the women go to the back. I mean, I've got to a point where I bristle over that and I'll say, no, the women are coming into the front and you can all go to the back.
Sorry, when do the women kind of
naturally
step in,
go
naturally go to the back, or is it the men who kind of push themselves forward?
They naturally go to the back. I think it's a bit of both, but they naturally go to the back. And I think there is so much more that we could and should be doing. I mean, I'm really pleased that PM Modi has, kind of women's empowerment, and he's looking at how you get more women into work and improve their skills. That's great. But there are women there who deserve to be noticed and deserve to have that profile that they currently don't have. So the Australia-India Women's Leadership Forum is about tapping into women who are currently in a leadership role in companies in Australia and India that are in the corridor. And this came about because of what I've seen and experienced, particularly in India, but also when I was in India in January, we could not find any women in these companies and in Australian companies in India that we could put on the stage. So I did a panel interview during Vibrant Gujarat, but it shouldn't be like that because there are women there. And I think if we can increase their visibility, make sure that they have influence, that they are known. When you talk about people-to-people connections, I'm talking about women-to-women connections and the power of that. So, we will see, I think, out of this, more women involved. We'll see them have a greater presence in the relationship. And, I am going to drive this forum hard. And, today we set up a LinkedIn group where we've now got that running. We've got a LinkedIn page. We don't have many followers as yet. We hosted a forum recently with the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, in Delhi. That went really well. We had a panel discussion on women's leadership. So, small steps, but I'm really excited about the potential of this forum. And as I said, when you talk about people-to-people relationships, women-to-women relationships can work because it's so untapped and so unrecognized.
Staying on the women-to-women relationships, we have Kamala Harris now competing for the top job in the United States. If you could share a meal with her, what will be the conversation be about?
Going to get into any world politics, but you're going to say that this is about a meal, right?
This is about women to women. You opened the door. I just walked through it. I just had it written down here, but I knew which way you would go.
Well, I think that I would want to discuss US politics with her and how on earth the US got to where they are. And I'm not going to go any further than that because I don't want to get involved in politics, whether it's global or local, but sometimes I despair with what's happening in the US. So I would like to have that conversation, and I think all power to her. All power to her.
In terms of,
But apparently she's a good cook.
Is she?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
And she would have to cook because, as you know, I don't cook a meal.
I will come to that later. We got all these things lined up. We know all this information. But staying on politics a little bit longer, over the years, we have had an increasing number of the Indian diaspora getting involved in politics. Some of them have made it to the federal level. Others are finding their feet in local politics, even more emerging at grassroots levels in council elections. Your comments and advice, especially to the women of color entering politics.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said women of colour. I mean, that's a term I don't really like. It's a term used in the US more than here, but I don't just think it's about our, young women who are from an Indian heritage. I think it's more generally about, our diversity in politics. I think that, there's not like one template that you can use to get more women into politics. I think that the party structure matters, and I think that the structure that Labor has in place and has had in place for some while and is always looking at how they can improve it is important because it actually promotes women within the branch structure, and that's important in terms of pre-selection. So I would say to a young woman, you have to be involved in in the party. It's okay to be an independent in some seats, but that does make it more difficult in others. So I think you've got to kind of weigh up what the best thing is for you, but a party structure is obviously much more effective. I think that you need to find a good mentor. You need to find someone who can be there to support you, who is going to champion you, and then you need to have a trajectory. So if I look at Karishma Kalianda, for instance, someone I admire and have been there supporting for a long time, she has values that are very much aligned to Labor. So she's in the Labor Party. She's been there for a long period of time. She's gone through council, but she's also had the support of those within the party in the Liverpool area to get her to be an MP. Now, the thing that benefited Karishma, of course, was that Liverpool is generally a safe seat. So it is easier to do that in safe seats than marginal seats. But it's not just, I think, about being elected. I will talk about Shravya Abanini, who, as you know, worked with me and is now running multicultural policy for the Prime Minister. And she's worked for different ministers. She worked for me when I was leader of the opposition. So there are young women in there who may not want to stand in an election, but can still be politically active. And it's that political involvement that I think is really important. So my advice to them is, not to give up, but to keep finding a way through. And if you've got a party structure that supports that, then you will get there. But that doesn't take away with some of the shenanigans that also go on that prevent women from being there in some situations. And that, I can reflect on a couple of seats and a couple of people where that's happened to, and that's always going to be there.
Right. Jodi, you've worked in media, politics and international relations. Which has been the toughest gig and the most satisfying?
Politics.
Toughest?
Toughest. Yeah, politics was tough, was really tough. You know, when I was member for Newcastle. I was a cabinet minister. Newcastle that was between 2007 and 2011. Newcastle was tough because it's a region, and because I was Minister for the Hunter and I was member for Newcastle, and there was the biggest coal export port in the world, challenges around diversification, renewable energy. It was just extraordinary. And then, of course, I got caught up in that whole ICAC issue where I was a whistleblower. So that had its own toughness attached to it. That was tough. But then that saw me go back into politics as the member for Strathfield. And Strathfield, I loved representing. Strathfield is the most amazing. I have such fondness for that work, that community work. But I think that, it was tough. It was... In hindsight, would I have stood as leader again? I don't know. If I knew what I know now, I don't know. I won that democratic vote to be leader. But perhaps Chris was always destined to be Premier, and I'd like to think that that's the case, and that's what I've told him as well, that he was always destined to be there. I'm just not sure that I wanted the toughness that went with me.
right.
Not being there.
Right.
That was tough. But he's doing a great job, and I'm so supportive of him being there.
And the most satisfying gig?
Politics.
Okay.
Yeah, satisfying as well.
The best of times and the worst of times?
Yeah.
Perhaps a book can be written like that?
Well, people say to write a book, and I mean, there's no way I'm writing a book. The thing about politics is that in any given day, you can make such a difference to someone's life. You
Tell
deal
us
with...
about a time when that happened with you.
Well, you deal with people coming into your electorate offices. So you're not just going to events, you're not just in the parliament discussing legislation or, raising issues on behalf of your community. You are actually in your electorate office, and you are dealing one-on-one with people who have very serious, significant issues that are impacting them. And usually when someone comes to see a member of parliament, they come because somehow they've slipped through the government net. It could be around domestic and family violence, around mental health, around getting access into the hospital system, around fines that just they're accumulating and preventing someone from actually entering the workforce. There are a range of issues, homelessness. But you do have the ability to make change and to help people. And I was really fortunate that I had an electorate office staff who was so committed, who would spend days just trying to solve issues. But when you can solve an issue for someone, it gives you enormous satisfaction, not just because you've been able to deliver, but because you change someone's life fundamentally for the better.
Jodi, I'm going to get into a rapid fire round with you now.
Right.
All very simple.
I'm listening to the rain on the window here.
My favorite Indian festival?
Diwali.
24th March 2007. When I entered politics, I told myself
that I would give it everything I've got, and I would be strong and forthright and bold.
31st December 2021, when I left politics, I had learned
that life doesn't always go the way that you thought it would, but you can pick yourself up and you can start again.
Friendship to me means?
My husband, loyalty, kindness, caring, sensitivity, being able to keep secrets. Friendship is really important to me, but I guess at the basis of it is loyalty.
As a quinquagenarian, that is a person between 50 and 59.
I'm glad you explained that.
Well, I would say I had to read it because I've broken it up because I had to Google the ones. As
someone between 50
and 59.
Right, okay.
I didn't want to go through exact ages, so I just thought I'd keep it within a range.
Now people are going to go to Wikipedia and work out how old I am.
That's where I worked it out from.
Right. And you've given me a name.
So as a quinquagenarian, that is a person between 50 and 59, life has taught me that when it gives you lemons, you make lemonade or gin and tonic.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, I don't know. But probably lemon, because I actually my husband will tell you that I'm a real citrus fruit person, so I'm going to go with the lemonade.
Lemonade, right. Glass ceiling is a?
Breakable.
The one thing which very few people know about me
is that I love growing orchids and I love embroidering. I do cross stitch.
If there is a biopic made on me, who would you like, made on you, who would you like to play you?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know. Can I play me?
No, I mean, it's about you, so you are not on.
I'll play myself.
All right.
No idea. I'll play myself.
Jodi McKay, thank you very much for joining us on PAWAN LUTHRA podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
so lovely. You're such a good friend.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
You're lovely. Thank you.